So picture a standard two-car garage, right? Now, picture it just completely filled, like floor to ceiling, wall to wall, with identical cardboard boxes.
Oh, the classic e-commerce nightmare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Inside those boxes are, 1,000 units of a product that you were absolutely sure was going to make you wealthy.
Yeah.
But now, you literally cannot give them away.
Yeah, it happens so much more often than people think.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
But today, we are going to make sure that never happens to you. We are opening up a really detailed, just no-nonsense 2026 guide titled Alibaba plus Shopify, a straight-talk guide to sourcing, landed cost, and 2025 tariff reality.
It is a phenomenal document.
Right. Our mission for this deep dive is to basically hand you the updated playbook. We want to show you how to turn your capital into a real brand by sourcing products from China, while completely avoiding the hidden traps that, leave beginners paralyzed.
Which is so important right now because people often treat importing like it's a gamble or like, a guessing game. But success in e-commerce today is purely about understanding raw math. It's about navigating a very shifting legal landscape.
Yeah, the rules have definitely changed.
Completely. And it's also about knowing the crucial difference between just validating an idea and actually scaling a business. You really cannot operate on assumptions anymore.
Which, that brings us to the first massive assumption beginners make, right? How they actually source their products. The guide draws this very thick, permanent line between two distinct models that honestly get jumbled together online all the time.
They do, yeah. People use the terms interchangeably, and it's dangerous.
Right. So you have drop shipping, which usually means using AliExpress and apps that connect directly to your store.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have bulk importing, which is what actually happens when you dive into Alibaba.com.
And we really need to emphasize that these are entirely different business models with, frankly, inverse risks. Dropshipping is, the ultimate low barrier entry point.
Because it's cheap.
Exactly. It costs you $0 in upfront inventory. You only purchase a unit after a customer has actually paid you for it.
Which sounds great on paper.
On paper, sure. But because you're buying one single item at a time and then shipping it individually all the way from overseas, the economics are just brutal. You are looking at incredibly thin gross margins. We're talking often 15 to 35%.
Wow, that is tight.
It is. And your delivery times are stretching anywhere from 10 to 25 days. Plus, you surrender any ability to custom brand the product or the packaging.
Right, because you're just getting whatever generic box the factory has on hand. But then we swing over to the other door, which is bulk importing. Now you are acting like a traditional retailer. You're putting down real capital anywhere from, say, $1,500 to well over $20,000.
You're taking on real inventory risk.
Exactly. You are committing to minimum order quantities, or MOQs, of hundreds or sometimes thousands of units. But the payoff for taking on that risk is that your margins expand dramatically, right, up to 50 or 70%.
Which is where you actually build a sustainable business.
Right. And you can print your logo on the product. You can design a beautiful unboxing experience. And most importantly, you can deliver the item to your customer in 2 to 5 days.
Right. Using local fulfillment. And here's the thing. The professional workflow actually blends these two models perfectly. The biggest mistake you can make is viewing them as, like, a binary choice.
Like you have to pick one or the other forever.
Exactly. Many new sellers skip the validation phase entirely. They just blindfold themselves and dump $10,000 into a massive bulk order for a product that literally nobody wants.
Hello, garage full of boxes.
Exactly. But conversely, others stay in the drop shipping phase for years, and they're just constantly bleeding out on advertising costs because, like we said, a 20% margin simply cannot sustain a growing brand.
I always like to think of it like a relationship. Drop shipping is basically speed dating. You are just testing the waters, spending maybe 60 to 90 days running paid ads on various products to see if there's any actual consumer demand.
It's pure research.
Right. You track the clicks, you track conversions, but you are not committing long term. But once you find a product that consistently sells a winning SKU, you don't keep speed dating. You fly over to Alibaba and you put a ring on it with a bulk order.
I love that analogy. And that transition from validation to commitment, that is where the actual business begins. But the moment you decide to order, say, 500 units, You run straight into a mathematical illusion.
The spreadsheet trap.
The spreadsheet trap, yes. Beginners base their entire financial projection on the price the factory quotes them in a little chat window. But that factory quote is literally just the tip of a very large, very dangerous iceberg.
Okay, let's break down the actual math from the guide on this, because this is eye-opening. Say you find an accessory you plan to sell in your Shopify store for $30. The factory quotes you $3.20 per unit.
Sounds amazing, right?
Right, on a spreadsheet. Buying for $3.20 and selling for $30 looks like an 89% margin. I mean, at that point, you're mentally shopping for sports cars.
And that 89% is a complete mirage. The source text outlines what they call the true 7-line stack of landed costs, which tracks the physical journey of your product.
Okay, walk us through the stack.
So line 1 is the goods cost. The technical term you'll see is FOB, which stands for free on board. And that just means the factory's $3.20, quote, only covers manufacturing the item and dropping it off at the nearest port in China. Their responsibility ends right there.
Right. And getting it across the ocean, that's line 2, which is international freight. And then the second that cargo ship hits U.S. waters, customs demands their cut, right? Which brings us to line 3, duties and tariffs.
Exactly. And we'll explore the massive changes to those tariffs shortly, because it's a big deal. But the stack keeps going. Line 4 is inspection and compliance. Because, you're paying a third-party inspector $300 to $450 a day to verify the goods before they ever leave the country.
You definitely don't want to skip that. Never. Then line 5 is branded packaging. You aren't shipping a premium product in a flimsy blank poly mailer. So you have to add maybe 20 cents to $1.50 per unit for custom boxes and inserts.
And then line 6 is the 3PL intake. I feel like a lot of people forget this one.
Oh, almost everyone forgets it.
Because when your shipment arrives at a third-party logistics warehouse in the U.S., they don't just magically put it on their shelves out of the goodness of their hearts. They charge you $30 to $75 per pallet just for the labor of unloading, counting, and organizing your inventory.
Right. And finally, line 7 is refunds and shrinkage. Goods get damaged in transit, packages get stolen off porches, customers just, demand refunds.
Yeah.
You have to bake a 3 to 6% loss directly into your unit cost from day one.
So when you actually tally all 7 lines, the reality check hits hard. That original $3.20 factory quote morphs into a $9.35 actual landed cost.
Huge difference.
Right. Your margin instantly shrinks from 89% down to a much more sobering reality. And once you subtract your ad spend, the cost to actually convince a human on the internet to buy the product, your contribution margin settles around 40%.
Which is healthy, but it's not sports car money overnight.
Right. But wait, if I am staring at my spreadsheet and I'm watching my landed cost triple from $3 to over $9, my very first instinct is to get back on the chat with the factory and just grind them down.
Oh, I know. It's everyone's instinct.
Like, if I can negotiate that $3.20 down to $3, I just clawed back 20 cents of my lost margin, right?
Haggling over pennies on the factory floor is a trap. It completely distracts you from your actual lever of success. The single number that determines if an e-commerce business lives or dies today is CAC, customer acquisition cost.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Well, if you spend 3 weeks arguing back and forth with the supplier just to save 20 cents a unit, that is a very minor one-time static win.
Right.
It doesn't scale.
Right. You just save 20 cents on that one batch.
Exactly. But if you take those same 3 weeks and you optimize your store's conversion rate, or you test better ad creatives and you manage to lower your CAC by $2, that efficiency compounds on every single sale forever. You simply cannot manufacture your way to profitability if your marketing engine is inefficient.
So the leverage is entirely in the digital marketing, not the physical haggling. That is a massive paradigm shift for a lot of beginners.
It's the difference between a hobbyist and a real operator.
Okay, so now we really need to address line 3 of that cost stack, duties.
Yeah.
Because the legal landscape for importing into the U.S. has experienced just a tectonic shift over the last 12 months.
The rules have been completely rewritten. And, we are outlining the legal realities here purely based on the source text without wading into any of the politics behind them.
Where we're just looking at the facts on the ground.
Exactly. As a business owner, you simply have to adapt to the laws operating in 2026. You can't argue with customs. And the most consequential change, without a doubt, is the death of the $800 de minimis exemption.
Man, that was huge. Because for years, any shipment valued under $800 could enter the United States completely duty-free.
Yeah.
It was basically the loophole that allowed the entire dropshipping industry to explode in the first place.
Yep. It built empires.
Right. A customer buys a phone case, A factory ships one phone case directly to their house, and because it is worth $10, it just sails right through customs. But Executive Order 14324 ended duty-free treatment for commercial imports, regardless of their value.
And that change was compounded by the courts. In February of 2026, the Supreme Court ruled in Learning Resources v. Trump, which struck down the older IEPA tariffs.
Okay, so the old ones are gone.
Right, but they were immediately replaced by a temporary 10% import surcharge, which was implemented under Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. And you have to keep in mind that specific surcharge is set to lapse in July of 2026 unless it gets extended.
Okay, so what does all that legalese actually mean for the math?
Yeah.
The combined effect of all this legislation means goods originating from China now face a total duty rate of roughly 30%.
Yes.
You are paying your base harmonized tariff schedule rate, plus any remaining Section 301 duties, plus this new 10% surcharge.
It adds up fast.
It's like imagine you've driven a specific highway to work for free your entire life. You wake up one morning, and overnight, a massive toll booth has been constructed across all 4 lanes. That is exactly what the end of de minimis feels like for anyone who is still trying to drop ship cheap items from AliExpress.
That toll booth analogy is spot on, because every single individual parcel entering the U.S. is now assessed for duties. On a typical drop-shipped item, that translates to an unexpected $2 to $8 fee slapped on the package as it clears customs.
Which instantly evaporates the profit margin on a $15 impulse buy. I mean, it's just gone.
Completely gone. The era of sub-$10 drop shipping to the U.S. is effectively over. The per-parcel processing and duties just devour whatever margin you had. Which really highlights why identifying your exact HTS code, the harmonized tariff schedule classification for your specific product, is paramount.
You can't just guess on the paperwork anymore.
No, absolutely not. If you import, say, a ceramic mug, but you code it as a plastic cup to get a lower rate, customs will catch the discrepancy. Miscoding is the primary trigger for massive fines, delayed shipments, and just agonizing expensive reworks at the border.
Okay, so you have your math dialed in, and you understand the toll booth at the border. The next hurdle is avoiding scammers. Because wiring $10,000 to an anonymous entity overseas is terrifying.
It should be terrifying.
Right, you need a vetting process that is absolutely bulletproof.
Because receiving a shipping container full of defective, unsellable products will bankrupt a new brand. There's no coming back from that early on. The guide provides very rigid filters to apply when you're searching on Alibaba.
What are we looking for?
First, you only engage with companies carrying the verified supplier badge who also accept trade assurance. If they don't have both, you move on immediately.
Badges can be deceptive though, right? Like anyone can throw a logo on a profile.
Yes. Which is why the guide recommends digging deeper into the actual data. You want to look for suppliers operating on the platform for more than 5 years.
So they have a track record.
Exactly. Then check their communication metrics. You want a response rate above 90% and an average response time of under 4 hours.
Oh, wow, under 4 hours.
Yes, because if they are slow when they are trying to win your money, imagine how slow they will be when there's a problem. And most importantly, ignore text-only reviews. Anyone can pay a farm to generate 5-star text reviews.
So what do you look for instead?
You look exclusively for reviews containing user-submitted photos of the product sitting on a pallet or a warehouse floor in the US or Europe. Those are incredibly difficult to fabricate.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, as you filter through these, you're going to encounter both trading companies and direct factories.
Yeah.
And there is this pervasive myth among beginners that trading companies are like parasitic middlemen that must be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, people read one blog post and think they have to go cut out the middleman.
The assumption is that you always want to go straight to the source, straight to the factory, to get the absolute best price.
But here's the reality. Factories operate on massive scale. If you approach a huge manufacturing facility that produces 100,000 units a week, and you ask them to halt their assembly line for your little 300-unit trial order, they will simply ignore you.
They won't even reply to the message.
Exactly. Trading companies, on the other hand, exist specifically to aggregate demand. They consolidate small orders from multiple buyers, bundle them up for the factory, and manage all the complicated logistics.
And they usually have better communication, right?
Much better. They usually employ staff who communicate in excellent English. Yes, they charge a 5 to 15% markup, but for your first few orders, you are essentially paying for an overseas project manager. It is a highly rational trade-off.
Okay, so regardless of whether you partner with a factory or a trading company, the absolute non-negotiable rule in the guide is hiring a third-party inspector, like 2ME or SGS, before you release your final payment.
Yes, non-negotiable.
And you pay roughly $300 to $450 for what they call a man-day of labor.
And they utilize the EQL 2.54.0 standard, which probably requires a little explanation for folks who haven't heard it.
Yeah, break that down for us.
So you aren't paying the inspector to meticulously examine every single one of your 1,000 units. That would take days and cost a fortune. AQL stands for Acceptable Quality Limit. It is a statistical sampling method where the inspector pulls a mathematically determined random batch straight from the production line.
Okay, so they just check a sample.
Right. And if they find major defects in more than 2.5% of that random sample, the entire shipment fails, period. The factory is then forced to fix the issues out of their own pocket before you authorize the release of your funds.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there. Because Alibaba already has trade assurance. And it functions as an escrow service, right? They hold my money until I confirm I am happy with the order. Spending an extra $450 of my very limited startup capital on a private inspector seems entirely redundant when the platform itself provides buyer protection.
I am so glad you brought that up, because this is a devastating misconception that ruins businesses. Trade assurance is vital, yes, but you have to understand its limits. It primarily protects you against non-shipment, meaning where the supplier takes the money and just vanishes.
Okay, so it stops literal theft.
Yes. And it also protects against objectively wrong items, like if you order black leather wallets and they ship you a box of pink plastic sunglasses, trade assurance will easily rule in your favor and refund the money.
So it covers fraud, essentially.
Exactly. But it does not act as a subjective warranty. If you receive your goods in the U.S. and open a dispute claiming, the stitching on these wallets feels cheaper than we agreed upon, Alibaba's dispute team is going to ask for proof. And your opinion does not count as proof.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
The only documentation that will compel them to rule in your favor during a quality dispute is a formalized pre-shipment inspection report from an accredited agency proving the goods failed the EQL standard.
So the inspector's report is actually the weapon you need to activate the trade assurance escrow. Without it, you are basically just arguing with the supplier over opinions.
Precisely. Furthermore, you must keep every single detail of your negotiation inside Alibaba's official messaging system. Suppliers will often try to move the conversation to WeChat or email because, it's just more convenient for them.
Let me guess, don't do it.
Do not do it. If the agreed-upon dimensions, the materials, the strict deadlines, if all of that is not explicitly stated in the Alibaba chat logs, the dispute team will not consider it. That renders your escrow protection completely useless.
Wow, okay, so keep everything on platform. Let's say you run the AQL inspection, the report is clean, the goods are perfect. Now you face the logistical puzzle of physically moving a massive bulk order from Shenzhen to a customer's doorstep in the U.S. without causing a cascading failure.
And there are two primary conduits for that bulk freight. Air courier is fast, usually 5 to 10 days, but it is brutally expensive. You're looking at $6 to $12 per kilogram. This will eat into your margins rapidly.
So what's the alternative for heavier stuff?
The alternative is CLCL, which stands for less than container load. Instead of renting an entire 40-foot shipping container, your pallets just share a container with goods from other companies. LCL is dramatically cheaper, around $80 to $200 per cubic meter, but the trade-off is time. You are looking at 30 to 45 days on the water.
And before those goods even get packed into that container, compliance is another landmine you have to watch out for. Because if you are selling electronics to Europe, you need CE marks. If you sell items touching food in the U.S., you deal with the FDA. Kids' toys require CPSIA tracking labels.
And the critical mechanism here is that these compliance marks must be permanently printed on the product or on the primary packaging directly at the factory level.
I've seen people try to just buy stickers online.
You cannot do that. You cannot import blank products and plan to slap compliance stickers on them in your garage. Customs agents actively look for easily removable stickers. To them, it indicates post-manufacturing manipulation, and they will literally seize the entire shipment.
Okay, so the guide maps out this 8-step rollout for managing this entire process. And there is a brilliant negotiation tactic hidden inside it.
The trial order strategy, it's so smart.
It really is. When you make your very first purchase, you don't actually have to accept the massive minimum order quantity listed on the supplier's page. You can negotiate a trial order, say, 30% of the MOQ to limit your upfront risk. But you negotiate the unit cost based on the full MOQ volume.
Right. By promising that if the trial batch meets quality standards, you will immediately place the larger reorder at that exact locked-in price.
You are mitigating your downside while establishing a scalable pricing structure right from the start. And once that trial order ships, the absolute golden rule of logistics in this guide is routing it directly to a 3PL, a third-party logistics provider like ShipBob or Deliver.
Yes, do not handle the physical boxes yourself. Well, I have to push back on that a little because I know a lot of founders listening to this are incredibly scrappy. They are trying to stretch every single dollar. So if someone orders a 500 units of a small product, the temptation to just bypass the 3PL entirely, ship the boxes to their apartment, and pack orders in their living room to save on those intake and storage fees is massive.
I get it. It seems like a very logical way to save capital early on, but it creates a structural bottleneck that will choke a new business.
How so?
First off, having 500 units delivered to a residential address is a nightmare. Sea-free delivery trucks aren't equipped for residential pallet drops. But the deeper issue is the API integration. When you use a 3PL, their software plugs directly into the back end of your Shopify store.
So it's automated.
Totally automated. When a customer clicks buy, the order flows instantly to a warehouse robot, gets packed, and ships out the same day.
You are basically replicating Amazon's infrastructure for your own store. That is exactly the core philosophy. Modern consumers demand two-day shipping. If you are fulfilling out of your apartment, you're packing boxes after you get off work, printing labels on a little desktop printer, and driving to the post office twice a week.
Yeah, that's not two-day shipping.
No, that stretches delivery times into weeks. And not only does that wreck customer satisfaction, but it literally destroys your store's conversion rate. Features like Shop Pay accelerate checkouts specifically by highlighting fast, reliable delivery. If your logistics are slow, the algorithms and the customers will just abandon you.
So fulfilling from your couch is a fatal mistake disguised as a cost-saving measure. Let's pull the entire blueprint together for everyone listening. First, use drop shipping as a validation tool to test demand, but move to bulk importing to actually build the business. Second, price your retail strategy around the 7-line landed cost stack, not just that initial factory quote. Third, recognize that tariffs have permanently shifted the math. Fourth, use an AQUIL inspection report to give your trade assurance actual teeth. And finally, plug your supply chain directly into a 3PL to ensure rapid delivery.
It is a phenomenal framework for survival and for growth. But, there is a broader theme lurking behind all of these mechanics, particularly concerning the tariff realities we talked about.
Yeah, what's the big picture takeaway?
Well, think about it. That 10% Section 122 surcharge is scheduled to lapse in July 2026. Trade regulations are not static. They are in constant flux. The ultimate competitive advantage for a brand isn't simply mastering Alibaba or, grinding down a factory for the lowest unit cost.
Right.
It is constructing a supply chain and a pricing model with enough built-in margin to absorb macroeconomic shocks overnight. If a sudden 10% tariff increase bankrupts your store, you haven't built a resilient business. You have just built a vulnerability.
Agility and margin are your armor. Take all this raw math, pull up your product's exact HTS code today, or go open a Shopify trial store to start speed dating some concepts. Understanding these mechanics is how you guarantee you never end up staring at a garage full of unsellable boxes. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep building, and we will catch you next time.